At my sister's birthday gift, I found a photoshopped picture of my dead fiancé with, "Haha, she's dead rotting in hell," written across it. When I started crying, my family burst into laughter. That's when I began systematically destroying their lives. The shock hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I stared at that horrible image, my hands trembling as I held what should have been a birthday gift, but was instead a grotesque mockery of the woman I'd planned to marry. Sarah's beautiful face had been twisted with cheap digital flames, her gentle smile turned into something monstrous by my own sister's cruelty. The words scrolled across her image in Comic Sans font, as if even in her viciousness, Emma couldn't manage basic design competence. My sister's laughter filled the dining room, bouncing off the walls and echoing in my skull. Not a giggle or nervous chuckle, but full-blown hysterical laughter, tears streaming down her face like she'd just delivered the punchline of the century. The sound was joined by my parents' amused chuckles, creating a chorus of mockery that made my grief feel like public entertainment. "It's the past, so man up," my mother said, her voice cutting through the laughter with surgical precision. "If you can't get over it, you're not our son anymore. 25 years of birthdays, scraped knees, kissed better, and bedtime stories. And she was ready to disown me for grieving the love of my life." As I wiped away tears and walked toward the door, my father's voice followed like a knife to the spine. "There goes the woman of the relationship." The entire room erupted again, their cruel amusement chasing me all the way to my car. But something had shifted inside me during that walk to the door. The initial shock was crystallizing into something else entirely. Something cold and calculating that I recognized from my most complex professional challenges. My family had just made the catastrophic mistake of assuming I was powerless simply because I'd been blindsided. They were about to discover exactly how wrong they were. Driving home through blurred tears, I began conducting the same type of strategic analysis I used for Fortune 500 corporate restructuring projects. My family had declared war by weaponizing my deepest pain, crossing lines so fundamental that reconciliation was impossible. Fine. They wanted to see what I looked like when I stopped being the accommodating family member who absorbed their cruelty. They were about to get a comprehensive education in exactly who they had been dismissing all these years. What my family had never bothered to understand was that their computer guy, who supposedly fixed Wi-Fi, was actually a senior cybersecurity specialist for Meridian Strategic Consulting, one of the largest corporate security firms in the country. Not the kind who helped grandmothers recover Facebook passwords, but the kind who got called in when Fortune 500 companies discovered state-sponsored hackers had compromised their most sensitive data. I testified before congressional committees about digital warfare, maintained top-secret clearance for government consulting work, and earned $280,000 annually protecting corporate assets worth billions. My professional background had given me capabilities my family couldn't even comprehend. I understood digital forensics, financial investigation techniques, and legal evidence requirements. More importantly, I had a network of specialists who owed me favors from years of successful collaborations. Marcus Blake, a forensic accountant who'd worked on 3 major embezzlement cases with me. Patricia Stone, a private investigator who specialized in asset discovery and personal conduct investigations. David Foster, a litigation attorney who handled complex civil cases and knew exactly how evidence needed to be documented for maximum legal impact. My financial position was equally advantageous, though my family had never bothered asking about specifics. My investment portfolio was worth $1 million, including a diversified mix of tech stocks and real estate. I owned my apartment outright, had no debt, and maintained liquid assets of $180,000 for emergency situations. More importantly, my professional reputation gave me access to resources and expertise that money alone couldn't buy. The strategic advantages I possessed over my family were overwhelming once I analyzed the situation objectively. Emma lived her entire life on social media, documenting every detail across 17 different platforms with zero understanding of privacy settings or digital security. Her financial records, employment history, and personal relationships were essentially public information waiting to be compiled by someone with forensic training. My father's position as church deacon and community leader made him vulnerable to reputation damage, while his poor understanding of digital security meant any hidden activities would be easily discoverable. His passwords followed predictable patterns, his browsing history revealed his true character, and his financial transactions could be traced through multiple institutional records I knew how to access legally. My mother's carefully cultivated image as the perfect suburban mother and moral authority made her particularly vulnerable to exposure of any contradictions between her public persona and private actions. Her involvement in community organizations meant that personal scandals would spread rapidly through established gossip networks. I already had preliminary intelligence on all of them from years of casual observation. Emma's side business selling vintage clothing was clearly underreporting income based on her lifestyle versus declared earnings. Dad's working late explanations never matched his actual location patterns, and I'd noticed inconsistencies in church financial reports he'd helped prepare. Mom's sanctimonious judgments of other families seemed to mask insecurities about her own moral compromises. Most importantly, I had something they completely lacked: emotional detachment. While they would react emotionally to pressure, making desperate mistakes and poor decisions, I could maintain strategic focus and methodical execution. Sarah's death had already taught me that some pain was too deep for immediate healing, but it had also taught me that survival required clear thinking during crisis situations. The next morning, I began my methodical response with a comprehensive intelligence-gathering phase. I started by calling Marcus Blake, whose forensic accounting expertise had been invaluable during our work on several major corporate fraud investigations. Marcus's ability to trace financial irregularities and identify hidden assets was legendary in our professional circles. "I need a complete financial analysis of 3 individuals," I explained during our private consultation. "Business income, tax filings, lifestyle versus declared earnings, and any irregularities that might interest regulatory agencies. This is personal, but I need professional-grade documentation that would hold up under legal scrutiny." Marcus's response was immediate and comprehensive. "I'll need social security numbers, known employers, and any financial institutions you're aware of. I can cross-reference against tax databases, property records, and business registration filings. If there are discrepancies, I'll find them and document them with chain of custody evidence protocols." My consultation with Patricia Stone focused on personal conduct investigation and asset discovery. Patricia's background included 15 years with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division before establishing her private investigation firm, and her techniques for uncovering hidden activities were extraordinarily thorough. Personal conduct investigations require multiple verification sources, Patricia explained during our strategy session. "I'll examine digital footprints, financial transaction patterns, location data from various sources, and cross-reference against public records. If someone is living a double life, modern digital tracking makes it nearly impossible to hide completely." The legal consultation with David Foster established the evidentiary framework for everything we might discover. David's expertise in civil litigation and employment law meant he understood exactly how personal conduct issues could become legal vulnerabilities, and his knowledge of regulatory reporting requirements would guide our documentation process. "The key is building cases that regulatory agencies will consider credible enough to investigate independently," David advised during our legal strategy meeting. "We're not creating accusations. We're compiling evidence of already existing violations and ensuring it reaches the appropriate authorities through proper channels. Everything must be documented according to evidence chain protocols." Within 72 hours, my team had produced comprehensive intelligence packages on all 3 family members that exceeded my most optimistic expectations. Emma's financial irregularities were extensive and well documented, including unreported income of approximately $28,000 annually over 3 tax years, and systematic misuse of employee benefits for personal profit. The evidence included bank deposits that didn't match reported income, social media posts showing inventory and sales not reflected in tax returns, and customer testimonials describing a much larger business operation than her official declarations. My father's situation was even more damaging. Marcus had identified significant financial irregularities in church accounts coinciding with Dad's treasurer responsibilities. including $47,000 in questionable transactions over 3 years. Patricia had documented an extensive extramarital affair with the church secretary, complete with hotel receipts, location data, and communication records. Most damning, they had been conducting their relationship using church resources and planning to embezzle additional funds to finance a new life together. Mom's background revealed the most shocking discovery of all. Patricia had uncovered adoption records indicating a secret child given up 26 years earlier, during a period when my parents had briefly separated. The child had been the result of an affair, and Mom had convinced Dad she'd miscarried his baby while secretly arranging private adoption. She'd maintained contact with the adoptive family for decades, violating the legal adoption agreement while building her reputation on moral superiority and family values. The systematic implementation of consequences began with Emma, since she had been holding that horrible box with such obvious satisfaction. I started by compiling evidence of her tax evasion and forwarding comprehensive documentation to the IRS, State Revenue Department, and her employer's Corporate Ethics Committee. The evidence package included 3 years of financial records, social media documentation of undeclared business activities, and detailed analysis of her systematic income concealment. Simultaneously, I anonymously provided evidence of her fiancé Marcus's infidelity to her wedding planning social media groups. Marcus had been cheating with 3 different women through dating apps he'd never deleted, and his conversations revealed his plan to stay with Emma only until after the wedding for financial stability. The public exposure of his betrayal destroyed their engagement spectacularly, with Emma confronting him at an expensive restaurant where other diners recorded videos of their breakup argument. Within 2 weeks, Emma had lost her job, her fiancé, and gained the attention of federal investigators examining her for tax evasion and employee fraud. Her perfect Instagram lifestyle collapsed as she scrambled to hire attorneys and accountants to address criminal charges, eventually moving back into her childhood bedroom and working at a coffee shop for minimum wage. My father's destruction was even more comprehensive. The evidence of his church embezzlement and adultery was forwarded anonymously to the church board, his employer, and local news media. The scandal rocked our small community, resulting in his immediate termination, removal from all church positions, and criminal charges for grand larceny and breach of fiduciary duty. His affair partner's husband filed for divorce and moved their children away from the community that had trusted Dad as a spiritual mentor. The local newspaper ran the story on their front page. Church deacon arrested for embezzlement and adultery scandal. Dad's mugshot stared back from every newsstand, his reputation permanently destroyed, and his future prospects reduced to low-wage employment in neighboring towns, where his notoriety hadn't spread. Mom's reckoning came through direct contact with her secret son, David Henderson, now a successful 26-year-old architect living in Chicago. I'd located him easily through professional directories and sent him comprehensive documentation of his origins, including copies of all the correspondence his birth mother had sent to his adoptive parents over the years. David was remarkably mature about the situation, but his decision to meet his biological parents triggered the complete collapse of my parents' already strained marriage. The confrontation occurred on their front porch on a Tuesday morning, witnessed by several neighbors who had been following Dad's legal troubles with growing fascination. Mom's carefully constructed image as the moral authority of the community crumbled as her decades-long deception was exposed publicly. Dad, despite his own criminal behavior, couldn't tolerate being married to someone who'd hidden a child from him for 26 years and filed for separation within the week. 5 weeks after my birthday humiliation, my family's lives had completely imploded. Emma was facing federal charges while working minimum wage jobs to pay legal bills. Dad was living in a motel and working at a used car lot, the only employer willing to hire someone with pending embezzlement charges. Mom was alone in a house she couldn't afford, surrounded by neighbors who now saw her as a hypocrite and liar. That's when they broke into my apartment, desperate and panicked, begging me to somehow undo the consequences of their own choices. They stood in my living room like lost children, finally understanding that their quiet family target had systematically destroyed their lives using capabilities they'd never bothered to recognize. "We know it was you," Emma said, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "All of it. The IRS investigation, Dad's church situation, Mom's secret son. We know you did this. I poured coffee with deliberately steady hands, letting the normalcy of the action contrast with their desperation. Good morning to you too. How did you get into my house? Their begging was pathetic and predictable. They wanted me to use my computer skills to fix their credit reports, delete online coverage, maybe even manipulate official records to minimize their legal troubles. They wanted me to commit crimes to clean up the messes they'd made with their own crimes. We're family, Emma said, like it was a magic word that could undo everything. No, I replied, the word feeling final in a way that surprised me. You made it very clear 5 weeks ago that I'm not your family unless I meet your conditions, unless I grieve on your timeline, unless I become the person you think I should be instead of who I actually am. I walked to the front door and opened it, letting cool morning air flow into the apartment. I want you to leave. Go back to whatever motel rooms and childhood bedrooms and empty houses you're living in now. Think about the kind of people you really are. They filed out slowly, shoulders slumped with defeat. Emma paused in the doorway with something that might have been genuine regret. I really am sorry about the picture. It was cruel and stupid, and I knew it would hurt you. I know exactly why you did it, I replied. You did it because you thought I would take it and come back for more family dinners, where you could continue using my pain as entertainment. You never saw me as a real person with real feelings. I was just the convenient family punching bag who wouldn't fight back. After they left, I sat with my coffee and reflected on what I'd accomplished through 5 weeks of methodical, strategic execution. Emma was facing federal prison time and financial ruin. Dad had lost his reputation, career, and freedom, with criminal charges that would follow him permanently. Mom had lost her marriage, social standing, and carefully constructed moral authority, becoming the subject of community gossip she'd once dispensed about others. Most importantly, I discovered that real family wasn't about shared genetics or childhood memories or holiday obligations. My colleagues at work had shown more compassion during my grief than the people who'd raised me. They'd sent flowers to Sarah's funeral, given me space to process my loss, and never suggested I should get over it faster than felt natural. I pulled out my phone and texted David Henderson, my secret brother, accepting his invitation to lunch later that week. Then I called Dr. Bennett, the grief counselor I'd stopped seeing when I thought I was better, and left a message requesting an appointment. Maybe it was time to figure out how to rebuild a life that didn't revolve around either loss or anger. The complete victory I'd achieved through strategic thinking and professional expertise had taught me that revenge, while satisfying, wasn't the same as healing. Sarah would have encouraged me to forgive my family eventually, but she also would have insisted I protect myself from people who treated my love for her as weakness. I'd chosen to honor her memory by becoming someone she could be proud of, even if it meant walking away from people who shared my DNA but not my values. That choice felt like the most genuine family decision I'd made in years, and the morning sun streaming through my windows seemed to approve of the new life I was finally ready to build.